thanks, Joe, but I really want to thank Robbie for the welcome. We've all been to occasions where there's been welcome to country, and they've almost become a formality that you get over before you get on to the real business. Well, the welcome to country today and the real business of the executions of the two men whose images we see behind us make the welcome to country today a substantial one that we all feel, not something that we get through before we get on to the business, because the welcome and the business are one and the same, as Robbie spelled out. When I was asked to talk about this, my mind went back to something that I've done, and I imagine many of you have done as well. You've had the pleasure of walking the streets of Paris, and there you see marble plaques all over the city saying, "Here for the liberation of Paris fell," and then the name of a French person, and then a date during the Second World War. And as I saw a few of these walking the streets, I realised that if there was a Frenchman killed there, then on the other side of the street there was a German killed. And as I walked the streets of Paris, I realised that everywhere I trod, in the 2,000 or 3,000 years in which Paris had been settled, someone had been killed violently wherever I put my foot. Whether it was the French Revolution or the slaughter of the communards, that there was this city that had been mortared with the blood of its citizens. And then I thought to myself, in 1983 when this was, what is the parallel in Australia? Well, for European Australia, I'll come to that in a minute, but the only thing you can get close to that situation, which is true all over Europe, not just Paris, wherever you trod, there's been a violent death there. That, of course, applies to the indigenous peoples of Australia and the Torres Strait. The same situation of wherever you trod, there is what Robbie calls the ghosts and the spirits of those people. But of course, the possession of the land was the first step towards what the occupiers wanted. They needed to clear the land to take possession of it, but it wasn't the end of what they needed to do. Joe referred to the fact that we've got war memorials all over Australia. I think it's important to remember that those war memorials are very often, and it never says this, large numbers of the people who were killed there were working people who were conscripted to go off to fight in imperialist wars. From the very beginning, when we sent off troops to New Zealand to shoot down the Maori in 1860, to the Sudan in 1883, to the Boxer Rebellion, and then to the Boer War, to what Archbishop Mannix called a sordid trade war in 1914 to 1918. Things are a bit different, of course, when we have a few volunteers going off to fight for the Republic in Spain against the wishes of the Australian government. And then again, we have that somewhat more ambiguous situation from 1941 to 45, when we were engaged in an anti-fascist war, which is also, of course, connected to imperialist rivalries across the world. But those war memorials then go on to Korea and Vietnam and through to the present day. And it's for that reason that I am not at all in favour of adding an Aboriginal liberation war memorial to those war memorials. Because the Aboriginal memorial is to people fighting against imperialism and the taking over of their country. Whereas those war memorials, with very few exceptions, are doing the opposite. And therefore, I think it's inappropriate that we think of adding those commemorative plaques to those sites. They need their own commemorative areas, as is being proposed for this place. The other thought that occurred to me, of course, and as I've been working on the history of the Builders Labourers Federation across Australia, there's not a building, major building in Australia, to which you cannot add a plaque saying, "Here, for the making of profit, died some building worker." We can put those plaques all around Australia. Every factory would also have a site where you could say some manufacturing worker had been killed. The thought that I think we can link these things together with, whether it's the the invasion and occupation of Australia, whether it's the wars in which working people were conscripted to fight, or whether it is the class war in which those people were killed on building and manufacturing sites, and as transport workers, all of those ways in which working people have died. Many of them, of course, in the building trade being aborigines, because that was the kind of work that was often open to them. What we can see linking all these things together, that they are not commemorised, they are not prosecuted, because in our kind of capitalist society, killing is not murder when it's done for profit. Now look, that's the end of our